Okay, so everyone, my name is Danielle Carrick. I'm really excited to be here today to talk with you about my experience merging D3 and React together. So this title is called Battle for the DOM, D3 versus React, but I'm just gonna go ahead and spoil it for you right now and say that D3 totally wins. I'm sorry, I lied. React totally wins. I already messed up. Which I guess makes React the red rock'em sock'em robot in this situation. But D3 definitely gets some good punches in there, and in the end, they come together and decide to work together as a front-end development super team. So first, a little bit about myself. I am a senior data visualization engineer at Conde Nast, and I did apply for this job at a hostel in Vietnam, and got my offer letter before I woke up for a sunrise hike in Sri Lanka, so that worked out really well for me. But a little bit about Conde Nast is we have over 20 really iconic brands that I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. For those of you who flew in from wherever, maybe you picked up one of these at the airport to read on the plane, or even better yet, maybe you're also a subscriber. So some of those brands are The New Yorker, Teen Vogue, Vanity Fair, Bonap, just a ton. And so myself and my team are in a really unique position at Conde Nast because we get to work with both the editorial side of things, partnering with different brands to help create really awesome interactive data visualizations for the web. And also we get to work on the business side of things, creating a lot of internal data products for different stakeholders to look at the vast amount of data that the Conde Nast brands have. Because we do have so many brands, we get over 100 million unique visitors per month across our network. So I want to first talk a little bit about kind of where I came from. I've been doing data visualization for like a long time, and more recently, more interactive data visualization using primarily D3 and JavaScript. D3, which stands for Data-Driven Documents, is, I'd say, arguably the most popular, most widely used library for data visualization because it is so robust and lets you have like really nuanced control over everything you want to do. And then more recently, moving more towards React, as we will see. So the first thing I wanted to share with you guys are some examples of work that I had done in D3 and vanilla JavaScript, a little bit sort of like the before, if you will. So this particular project was done with Wired. Wired's super cool because they're already kind of very graphic data visualization minded. So for those of you who have picked up their print magazine, you'll see a lot of times in the back they have a section called info porn, where they have these really cool, amazing infographics, data visualizations, that kind of thing. But they're super awesome, but they just kind of live in the print magazine, and we thought, hey, we have the ability and the skills to move these from print to online and leverage all the great things that the internet can do, all the interactivity. So in this particular example, we are looking at, these are called horizon charts, and we're looking at how data leaks change over time. Feels like there's a new data leak like every other day. I think like 2 weeks ago, I think Capital One got hacked, so it's happened all the time. So one thing when I first looked at this, it's a horizon chart. As someone who's been doing data viz for a really long time, I honestly had no idea how to read this. So one thing that we thought would be really awesome is being able to create something online that made it more clear for those who weren't familiar how exactly to read this visualization. So the thing about horizon charts is they're actually just a different take on an area chart, which I think we're all familiar with, we all know and love. So if you wanted to move from an area chart to a horizon chart, you would just divide the area chart into however many bands you want. In this case, we did 6. And then you would stack those bands on top of each other. So that way, a user, unlike the print version, could switch between those two views, hopefully understand what's happening better, and of course, the tooltip has all the information. So that one was created all in D3 and Vanilla.js. And just to give you a sense of just kind of like the shape of the code, I mean, first of all, I did this like 2 years ago, so it's a little like cringy for me to look at, but just some like key D3 things is you typically, there's a lot of selecting. So you would, I spelled select wrong. Okay. You would select your container element. In this case, it's some ID or some div with an ID visual container, and you would start to append things to it. Lots of chaining, lots of adding DOM elements, lots of stuff going on there. So the next project that I wanted to share with you in the like D3 Vanilla.js days is one that we did for Teen Vogue. It was called A Year of Tweets from @RealDonaldTrump. And this one we did to mark the 1-year anniversary of his inauguration. Since he does like to tweet a lot, we decided to like kind of explore what exactly he's tweeting about. And you can see right away that there are 3 that like got a lot of engagement. So this one up here, I believe that one links, if you guys remember, the GIF of CNN getting hit by a train. This next one, it says, "Why would Kim Jong-un insult me by calling me old when I would never call him short and fat? Oh well, I try so hard to be his friend, and maybe someday that will happen." So if you wanted to like look at more tweets about North Korea, you can filter it. Maybe you wanted to see like what he tweets about in the summer and like zoom in and explore it that way. So that one was like kind of fun and a little sad at the same time. So again, just to like have an idea of like what's going on here, we do a lot of selecting things in the DOM, and then appending other things to the DOM, and then joining the data to the different DOM elements that we are creating. So select, enter, append are all sort of like big. If you've done D3, that's like a lot of what you're doing. All right, so that brings us to the project that inspired this talk and also my transition into the React universe. And this was one that was done with the New Yorker for the 2018 midterms. So this project was awesome because, you know, it's always fun to work with the New Yorker and do a project that gets really wide reach. But it was also done on a super tight timeline. I was working with 2 React developers, and I was the D3 developer, and the idea was they were going to do their thing in React, create the architecture of the application, and I was going to do my thing, make a map in D3, like been there, done that, let's do it again, and then combine them all together. So I remember it was a pretty tight deadline. I remember meeting with the developers on Halloween dressed as Cruella de Vil, and the election was November 6th. And I remember the developer telling me that he wasn't sure if I was in costume or not, just because people at Conde tend to have very bold fashion statements. So anyway, as you can see, everything worked out in the end. But there were a lot of late nights, obviously. If you're not Instagramming about your project, then are you even really doing it? So I think it was maybe like the Saturday before the election. It might have been 12/23, it might have been 2/01, not sure. But we came together and we decided to combine the pieces. So this was also the first time that any Conde brand had been working with a live API before, so that in itself was totally new. One of the developers created a mock API for us to test with, and then we kind of came together and we said, all right, let's connect the puzzle pieces of D3 and React together. And chaos ensued. So for those who have some familiarity, both React and D3 want access to the DOM. As we saw, there's all the D3 selects, all the appending, all that kind of stuff happening. But of course, React also has a virtual DOM, so it wants control as well. And they created this sort of like tug of war that we had to deal with. So luckily, if you are in that kind of sticky situation, and like me, you didn't have enough time to learn React in one day or to start over again, what you could do is put it in a wrapper. So that's what we ended up doing. The D3 way of doing something would be selecting your containing DOM element and then throwing all your D3 stuff in there. And likewise with React, you can just select a reference to that SVG container. So it'll get the job done, you'll meet your deadline, but it's, I don't think, the best way to do it. For starters, it's just probably gonna be slower. So this is a tweet from Amelia Wattenberger, one of those people I follow on Twitter and really enjoy her D3 and front-end content. She also just put a book out, which I bought, and I think if you're interested in this, would be really helpful to you as well. So she did a test where she looked at using D3 as a utility and React for all the rendering versus using D3 for both of them, and found out that it's just faster to use D3 as utility and React for rendering. And sometimes, maybe 4 times as long as like 1 millisecond to 4 milliseconds, I don't know, but it's generally, I think, just better practice to divide it up that way. So why would we even want to combine React and D3 to begin with? Well, first of all, React is the most popular front-end framework at the moment. D3 is the most popular data visualization library, so chances are, whether you want to or not, it's probably just going to happen. So I'll share some tips and tricks on what I've learned trying to combine them. So luckily for me, on my core team at Conde Nast, we also decided that we wanted to start combining D3 React and moved from our previous stack, our previous environment, to rebuilding all of our products in React. This is an example of one of the dashboards that we've built. So luckily, I got a lot of opportunity to learn on the job. And of course, also part of learning is watching a lot of videos online, including from some people over here. Thank you. So once you kind of watch your videos, things start to come together, and then you send a Slack to your friend that was also a developer on the New Yorker project, letting them know that you made your first React component. So that little bar chart there ended up evolving. And in the process of working on these things, there was a lot of things that I learned that would have been super helpful to have known back late October, early November of 2018. So if I had to boil it all down, the too long didn't read version of this talk would be to save all the DOM, give all the DOM manipulation to React, and give all the data manipulation to D3. And we'll look at some examples. So first, let's talk about just your friendly neighborhood bar chart. Partially because bar charts are so common, they're used everywhere, they're probably the most widely used visualization, and that's because everyone's so familiar with them. They're really easy to read, they're really easy to understand, and very accessible. So this is a visualization that we use a lot in our dashboards. It's kind of like the evolution of that image I showed you in the Slack screenshot before. And not all bar charts are created equally, so this one has a little bit of a twist to it. It's not just showing straight values, it's showing indexes. So an index is when you normalize something relative to something else, and where we can see the little purple is where those data points are over-indexing. So having built that component, it was really easy to use it for something else. Oops, wrong one. Oh. Okay. This one. So since we're talking about the election, I decided to take that election data and look at it in a different way. Maybe I can zoom a little. So I took the component that we had made before, and I refactored it a little bit and put in the election data. So what we can see here is for all of the gubernatorial, aka governor races, the gap between the winner and the loser. So if it's colored blue, that means the Democratic candidate won, and if it's colored red, that means the Republican candidate won. And you can see it was super close in Florida. Hawaii was a landslide, and all the way down the line. So this one was pretty easy to put together. Let's look at, yes, bar chart. So the only things that D3 is really doing here, one thing that I've always end up using D3 for is setting up a scale. In this case, it's kind of like what Mihai did with the remap function. So in this case, we want a linear scale. We're going to give it a number between 0 and 1, and then we want D3 to give us back a number between 0 and the width available to the visualization, so that we can plot it on the right spot. And another thing that is really helpful is to also use it for another type of scale you can use, is an ordinal scale or like a categorical scale. So if the value is GOP, then we made it red. If it's Democrat, we made it blue. If it's independent, we made it green, da 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 da. And the rest just happens in React land. So, oops, that's bigger. Okay. So the next super common visualization is a line chart. And I think Mihai also showed something like this, but the way that you have a path element or like a line in SVG is you send this super long, crazy string of numbers and letters to the path element, and it's like, oh, cool, got it, let me draw a line. But this is sort of not easy to read or look at, but luckily, D3 will just make one for you. So if you wanted to generate a line, a thing that's super helpful is you just create a line generator. So in this case, we're like, let's make a line. I wanted to have this kind of curve, so that's like a nice sort of like wavy curve. And then all of the X values are coming from the date part of our data, and the Y values are going to be based off of what we're calling in the data, just value. And then all you have to do is pass that to the D property, and it just and then it gives you this awesome string. Another thing that I find myself using D3 for a lot is time parsing. So if you work with data, you're probably getting time in like a bunch of different ways. In this example, I was getting time where it was this month, date, year format. So all you have to do is like look over on this handy dandy table and tell D3 like what format to expect. So I'll parse it into UTC, and then you can use d3.timeFormat to parse it back into however you want to display it on your site. And then the code ends up kind of looking like this. So like, I know it's too small to read, but it's more about the overall image. So we have the parsing, we have our scale, our line generator, and then just rendering. So that brings us back to our friend the map. After learning a lot about React, about using React and D3 together, I thought back, like, if I could go back in time, how would I then make the map today? So here's the map. So one thing that I decided to do is, first of all, use a hex map. I just like the idea that all of the states have equal visual weight. And it kind of looks kind of cool. And you can still hover over, so we can see we're in Utah. Utah did not have a gubernatorial election in 2018, but they did have a senator election, and Mitt Romney won. And let's see, in New Jersey, where I grew up, Bob Menendez won. So here, this hex map, let's see, is, okay. First of all, I wanted to give a shout out to this GitHub user who did all the math to create that all that hex map to begin with, so thank you. And again, I'm using D3 just to set up the categorical scale, because that's super fun and easy. And then through that stacked bar at the top, probably doing something the same. Yeah, another scale there. I'm using usestate to switch between the governor and Senate results, using some Material UI toggle, all that kind of fun stuff. So that is how I would remake the map today. Oh yeah, and so just like a high-level view, there's really just like a teeny. We went from, like, when I first made the map, it was like an embarrassingly long amount of D3 code, and now it's just this like tiny little bit, but still super helpful. So if I had to just to summarize, wherever you can, like this, bar charts and line charts aren't all of the visualizations available in the world, but they're very common. But generally, leave React for all of the DOM manipulation, D3 as a utility for things like scales, time parsing, generators. It can do more than line generators. It can generate lots of really cool shapes. Just check out the docs. And this is my past self high-fiving my current self.